Brilliant.
Wow.
You should look at
Where is the baby? She's sleeping. She's napping. She'll be out here today.
Oh, good. I got to hold her.
Yeah, of course.
Organization.
See, you can imagine it.
So I don't know how many damn years it's been since I.
How are you? I'm good.
You're full of somebody.
Yeah, that was fancy night. It was, yeah.
It is.
It's crazy.
Hi. Good to see you.
Having a time today.
Thank you. Yeah. It's a beautiful place out here. Nice.
75 years. That's I like that.
All right. Oh, we've got millions of them. Let's keep it going. All right. Now I think we're getting pretty close to ready. We'll have to introduce Mr. Darrell Reef Snyder. Hey! That's the man with the plan from the very beginning. He's great. All right. Darrell has been with the Manchester Tank Company since the Manchester Tank Company was the Manchester Tank Company. So that's a long time. And he has done an amazing job, and he has contributed tremendously to the propane industry, to the agricultural industry, to the motor fuel industry, and he has primarily been responsible for many, many safety enhancements that have been made to propane-type products, tanks, valves, and whatever else.
Watch it, Tom. You're getting sure your way.
And anyway, I'll tell you what, the greatest thing about him, he is a great friend, and we've been friends almost, well, not quite for life, but a good while anyway. And I certainly trust him as one of my friends, and we associate with each other since now we live in Tennessee. I didn't think he was going to make the move. Tell you the truth, we went to Dallas, Texas, and he was going to move to Dallas, Texas with us and all that. And he got him a nice condo there, and he never made the move. But then when we came to Tennessee and he got his first John Deere, man, he was hooked. He was hooked. All right. Next person I'd like to introduce you to, which again needs no introduction, is Brother Rob Reef Snyder. Yeah. And again I say, Brother Rob. Hey, there he is, the cowboy. Hey. Come in here. Whoa, be careful, cowboy.
All right.
Come on through. All right, man, I tell you what. We've got the past, the present, and the future of the company right here on this podium. Now, something. Whoa, whistling a microphone makes it really good. All right. Okay.
Does that look familiar? Those of you around in 1987, that was a groundbreaking at Hannibal, Missouri. The reason I put this slide up here is that I wanted to talk briefly about my brother and I. Recently, I was in Rochester, Minnesota with my daughter for Mayo Clinic. I realized that there's something very much in common between the Mayo brothers and Daryl and Rob Riefschneider. So these two guys are engaged in bronze, and Daryl and I are still kicking. But they had a saying called "my brother and I." And truly, that's what Daryl and I have done all of our years. I remember back in 1946, I was 11 and Daryl was 13. We rode our bikes from Linwood, California to Manchester Boulevard. I thought it was 15 or 20 miles, but my son says it's only 5 or 6. But the reality of it is a hell of a long ways. And our dad decided to start us out really high in the chain of command, sweeping the floors. Between the wastewater baskets and cleaning the restrooms. We had a booming 10 employees, I think. At any rate, ever since then, I think some of you folks here know Daryl and I didn't agree on everything.
Well, that would be fun.
But I do want to say this. At the end of the day, we agreed on all the major decisions at the company for 52 or 3 years.
Amen.
Amen.
And he said amen. Did you hear that? All right. The first thing many of you may not know is our father, Ed Riefschneider, bought Manchester Welding and Fabricating Company, 738 East Manchester Boulevard in July of 1946. He ran a tough show. He had a partner, because the best we know, we're not really sure. There's no family records, no Bible written in that there was no money changed hands. But we think it was about $1,600, and he had a partner who was a very wealthy guy in Hollywood, and they got into a little bit of an argument about 6 months into their partnership. I really shouldn't call it a partnership, because I was around, Daryl was around, our sister Elaine was around, and the reality of it is that after 6 months, they made enough money that they parted company, and my dad was 100% stockholder. 6 months later, he passed away. So anyway, I want to say a few words about our dad, between Daryl and I.
Okay. So go ahead.
Well, I wrote the script for him, but what the heck. So
Good handoff there.
one quick thing is that most of you know what a blacksmith is. I think it's a lost art, but our father and his brothers were all blacksmiths in northern Colorado. And here's the famous thing he sold Daryl and I all the time. It beat into our brains. He said, when I was 9 years old, I was sharpening plowshares. I don't know how many of you know what a plowshare is, but it's a very heavy piece of metal.
And trust me, I've done that. It's a lot of work, and it's very hot.
So at the age of 20, Mr. Ed Riefschneider opened his own blacksmith shop in Eaton, Colorado. And a few months later, we don't know when, he moved to a great big town of Kellam, Colorado, where I was born.
Population 21.
Yep. Anyway, 21.
And we're fine with that. So
He was an inventor. I'll go back to that. In fact, at the age of 25, he had a patent on some beat pulling equipment. And there's a long story with that, which I can't take the time to do it. He was the founder, really, of Manchester Welding. And he was a blacksmith, inventor, founder, great guy,
welder.
welder.
But,
And this is his shop in Kellam, Colorado. And that's a blacksmith shop, but just in case you didn't know what it looks like. I have an anvil like that in my courtyard in California. This is the patent that he had on a particular item. And a quick story behind that. International Harvester, John Deere, Ford came to my dad, our dad, and said, we'd like to use that patent to make this piece of equipment for sugar beets, which is a big deal in northern Colorado. And he told him to pound salt, but I think he probably used different words. And the bottom line is that he passed away in July of 1947. Several months later, my mother got a call from one of her uncles in Colorado and said, did you know that Ed's patent was being used by International Harvester, et cetera, et cetera? So my mother hired a patent attorney to find out if there was anything left. Patent attorney did a lot of research, came back in 6 months and said, at the end of that time, if you'd have came to me 6 months ago, I'd have made you a very wealthy woman because the patent had run the statute of limitations. Daryl, do you want to jump in here on anything?
Well, you pretty well covered it all, man. The only thing that he got the name wrong was Oliver Corporation instead of International Harvester, but that's okay.
So sometime after that, I don't know the exact dates, he moved to Las Vegas to work as a welder in a magnesium plant in Henderson, Nevada. And our mother sold the equipment, and we had a blacksmith shop and a convenience store and a gas station in Kellam, Colorado. So she sold it all, put us in a car, and drove us to Las Vegas.
And we spent 6 months in Las Vegas, and the temperature was about 110 and no air conditioning.
So after that period, we have some pictures in the slideshow. We lived in this gigantic travel trailer called Bob Thompson, 16 foot long.
And then we bought a 24-footer. Whoopee.
Yeah, monster. And during the war, our dad was very ingenious. First of all, he didn't like to work for anybody else. I think he either got fired or quit several defense after we moved to California.
Don't know the answer to that question.
And this picture here is a picture of a welding machine, gasoline powered, which were very hard to get a hold of, and he rented those out to put food on the table. Now, the last story I want to say about our dad is that he said to Daryl and I don't want you guys to ever learn how to weld.
And I took him at heart and still can't.
So the question is, who in the heck is this?
It's Brother Rob.
That's me at the age of 5. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't learn to weld then, but I did later. And I didn't follow my dad's instructions. So I just told Nancy backstage, we had a little labor problem in California. And I think I welded in plant the 3/4 flanges at the top of the DOT cylinder for several weeks. So I can do it, but don't trust me anymore.
I bought a welding machine, but I can't use it. Hey.
Our next honor roll, of course, is none other than our mother, Molly Riefsnyder. And when my father died in July of 1947, she worked 2 days a week doing payroll at a market in Linwood. She quit her job and took over the management of the company. We don't know. We think there was 10, 12 employees. Daryl could tell you a little bit about the customers we had.
Well, we had one customer. It's called Coast to Coast Trailer. And in the back of the room, there's a cylinder that weighs 48 pounds. And I weighed about 48 pounds, picking them up and painting them. And, of course, today they weigh 17 pounds, but big change. But my mom said we could sew dresses or do books or run the tank company, so she chose the latter.
Yeah. So our mother was a woman in a man's world. Many of you heard that phrase. Her biggest strength was selecting good people. Because Daryl and I have said many times, she knew very little, if anything, about the fabrication of propane tanks and vessels.
Well, there was times she'd go in the plant for a year at a time.
Yeah, Daryl, that's not true.
That's true.
All right, whatever. We see how we agree?
But it didn't matter because that wasn't her strength.
In 1955, she started the very first stock bonus retirement plan. She was very people-oriented, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. In December of 1947, she picked up, we had a big argument with the landowner, this huge facility, a 2-car garage, and bought a plant of, 3,000 square foot brick building and half-acre land in December of 47 in Linwood, California. The one thing our mother had was exceptional financial skills and people skills. She was co-founder of the Compton Counseling Service. She was a civic leader. She was on the Planning Commission. In fact, there's stuff over here about all the awards she had. She served on as Optimus Club, USO board, YMCA, and she played the stock market like a champ.
But, she went to the Bank of America, and I'll say this with honesty, and the guy named was John Pettyjohn.
Yeah, it's true.
Never forget that. Yeah. He said, "Ma'am, you're broke and don't know it." And Don Johnson, here our current banker, our banker in the past years, can appreciate that. And, of course, we didn't understand that. We didn't know we were broke. Just kept on going.
By the way, she got the loan.
Not very much, so probably $5,000 or something.
We have no idea.
Yeah, we don't.
The guy was a jerk, actually. But no. I'm sorry, Don. Not all bankers are bad, but he wasn't the best. Anyway, One of the things that her advice to Daryl and I and Elaine was, when you're working, you arrive first and leave last. And treat employees, customers, and suppliers as family. Be innovative in design and business practices. And in fact, I don't know, but I think in the 1960s, she took a step that I had no idea. If those of you who've been around that long in the accounting business know what a Burroughs or NCR bookkeeping machine is, I think we were one of the very first in Southern California to have one. So that's Molly Riefsnyder in a nutshell.
Amen.
Next in our Hall of Fame is a guy named John Snap. And how many here knew John Snap? And it's some little history you may not know, and Daryl can chime in anytime he feels like it. The best of my knowledge, the company came with two guys that I can remember very well, and Daryl can too. That was John Snap and Virgil Austin. But John Snap was right out of the Navy and a master mechanic and a welder. Never finished high school that I know of, but he was a mechanical genius. Almost every welding fixture in all of our plants, up until the time he retired, were designed and built by John Snap.
He could crawl into a barrel with oil with a white shirt and come out clean.
Yeah.
True story.
So I don't know how many in the room know what a high-pressure test chamber is, but prior to pneumatic testing, thank you. But prior to pneumatic testing, we had to hydrostatic test every vessel. And John Snap came up with what is still being used today in the industry, a double-walled high-pressure test chamber for every kind of container in the world. And you don't want to be around one of them lets loose. But that's the proof test. Anyway, John should have patented the dang thing, but he didn't. High pressure was a big important, it was as John Boyer said, it's a fork in the road for Manchester, because up to that point, the interior vessels were full of water and you couldn't get them clean. When you had hydrostatic testing, they came out clean as a whistle. You just had to get the welding debris out. Big change in the industry. But John was also our DOT and ASME quality control inspector, filed all the reports, did all that stuff.
He was also kind of a father to Robert and I because we had no dad.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
Al Howard is a corporate attorney. I'm sure very few in this room knew him or heard of him, but he was very instrumental in helping our mother and Daryl and I. And he was our corporate attorney from 1946 to 1990. He was a skilled advisor and friend on the board of directors. He was in on every single acquisition we made up until the time he retired. And there are some long and great stories about that. He's not yet, but you're close. We want to talk a little bit about our dear sister, Elaine Rule, and we won't say anything bad about the kids. That may come later. But Elaine, for those of you who don't know, was raising a family all the time. We previously were talking, and when she came to work, we put her in a place that she fit very well, credit manager, because she was tough as nails. But she was also had a soft spot in her heart, and he was great at public relations and PR, employee relations, and the hospitality queen of the propane and RV industry. In fact, the next picture proves that. Because actually it was my idea to have a shrimp and champagne party, but Al and Elaine took it to a new level. And I never forget the first one we had at the Disneyland Hotel. We had no idea how many people were going to show up, and I think we overpurchased. But Al and I were on the balcony popping champagne corks on the parking lot. Yeah. But Elaine and my wife and Daryl's wife at the time can tell you many, many stories about what do you call it? Cleaning shrimp, etc. It's a messy, dirty job, but we finally decided to talk to Elaine into doing it the easy way. And next, Tom, why don't you introduce Mr. Who is that guy next to you?
That guy, I tell you what, I've run across him a few times along the way. But I'd like to tell you one thing about Al and Elaine, about the shrimp and all that. Because we used to go and have shrimp peeling parties. Well, now, I have never in my life seen shrimp that you could catch with a lure on an end of a rod. These were big old boys. I mean, I was kind of scared of some of them. But anyway, we'd get there and peel and eat and peel and eat. And you could eat all you wanted to while you're peeling. Now, don't stop peeling, you don't eat. But anyway, we'd peel for these champagne parties. And these were huge shrimps. And I found out that Al Rue found those things down in, San Felipe? He had a fisherman down there that he found that fished and got these big shrimp. And they were absolutely, we were known worldwide in the propane industry for having the greatest shrimp and the best champagne. Oh, my. Anyway, he's a product of those two. His dad, his name was Al Rue, was also a sales manager and a vice president of sales and vice president of marketing and everything else. And Glenn, I tell you what, first time I ran into this young man, we were in Elkhart, Indiana. He might have been all of 18 or 19 years old, but he was the production manager of this plant that Darrell was fixing to buy. And anyway, he's in there and nobody showed up to work that day. So here's Glenn, and he's having to take the cylinders that come to him, hang them on the line, turn around and get them on the other side when they came off, and put them down and go over and get this one and go back. Another fellow was standing next to me named Hugh Kilgore, and he said, can you imagine that when Glenn Rue gets in a position where he's managing people and somebody says to me, I can't do that, I just want to hear what he has to say. Anyway, without further ado, I will say he's a tremendous young man. We saw him from the growing up. We helped him get off and go get married. I had to make him go home for his first child's birth because he was so dedicated to Manchester. Anyway, Glenn, it's all yours.
Well, Tom, thank you very much. I've worked for Tom several times in my career, and he was always a great boss and a lot of fun, and I love your jokes. And everything you just said was true, especially about getting me out of the plant when my wife was having a baby because I wouldn't leave. But anyway, so I've got supposed to have 2 minutes here, so I'm going to read this really quick. So hi, I'm Glenn Rule. I'm the eldest son of Alan and Elaine Rule and the eldest grandchild of Molly Riefschneider. I wanted to say a few words on my parents' behalf. When Molly took over the company in 1947, Elaine was about 16 years old, and as she was the eldest, Molly assigned her with the household responsibilities, such as preparing meals and generally being responsible for Dylan and Robert. After college, I skipped a little bit, she married Al and somehow raised 4 boys, and I still wonder how she survived us. I believe I was in junior high school when Elaine returned to work at Manchester. She had several different roles over the years, including credit manager, responsible for corporate insurance. She was particularly good in her role as a PR for the company. Elaine, Darrell, and Rob were equal partners in the company, and each had their own strengths. I believe many of her strengths, Elaine felt her greatest was as a mediator to support Darrell and Rob in running and growing the business over the years. After Al got out of the Navy, he started working at Manchester under Ben Bruner as a salesman. He was on the road for weeks at a time and only home every other weekend. After several years, he left Manchester and became very successful in real estate. Al returned to Manchester in several roles: Western sales manager, VP of sales and marketing. He was also inducted into the RV Hall of Fame. I remember my mom and dad both really enjoyed coming to the plants and walking to the shop and talking with the employees. Many of these employees talked to me and said, boy, I think that's great. When are they coming back? Mom used to tell me how much she liked the smell of welding smoke in the shop as it brought back good memories. I think one of the best memories I have of Alan and Elaine is they were fun, and they were the fun, approachable, and loving executives at Manchester. Every employee was important to them, and they showed it. This is also true through the LP gas and RV industry. They both worked very hard, but also laughed very hard. I'm sure everyone still talks about the shrimp and cocktail parties at the many conventions over the years. I remember during my earlier days at Manchester, Molly would tell me that employees are our greatest asset. Both Alan and Elaine carried on that belief. And after Molly retired, I've heard people say that Elaine was the heart and soul of the company. Thank you for having us. Great to be here for the 75th anniversary.
This is Don Johnson. Congratulations to Manchester on 75 years. I was their longtime banker. In fact, I remember in 1976 having the privilege of working with them. They ran just this great company, and one day before Christmas, they said, we're buying this huge company in Tennessee, and then about an hour later after Christmas, we're buying this company in Ohio, and they surfaced at probably 125 million, kept everybody involved, an incredible job. And I can tell you that Rob and Daryl have unbounded energy. We would leave at 6:30 in the morning from Long Beach on a jet. We would fly to different places in Lubbock, pick up people, go from there to Elkhart to Tillsonburg, Canada, and come back and drop the people off. And sometimes I would come into Palm Springs we dropped them off in Palm Springs and we'd come into Long Beach by myself. The other thing is these two individuals were the most upbeat two people I've ever met in my life. With all the time I've spent with them, I never saw them on a down day, an off moment, a less than exuberant personality, and they're just wonderful to be with. As a matter of fact, one quick aside, we were flying on a multi-million-dollar jet talking about tens of millions of dollars, and Daryl said, you know, my wife's checkbook isn't, I can't figure out how much she has in it. So sitting in the back of the plane, I sat there and about a half hour later announced to Daryl that she was upside down about $2,600. And that's full service banking. The other thing about energy, Daryl used to have a midnight Christmas party. It started at midnight. Now that's energy. But I will say this, these are wonderful people, incredible family, a wonderful company, wonderful success. And it was my privilege to be involved all those years. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Don. You stand up, Don, so the people can see you.
Hello, my name is Tom Tarrenton of Tarrenton Industries in Freehold, New Jersey. And I want to just say to Rob and Daryl, congratulations on 75 years of Manchester Tank. And everyone, friends, family, suppliers, they've supported over the years. And you really are a family organization. And I particularly want to say thank you for all the 38 years that we've been with Manchester Tank and continue to work with the new team at Manchester, who are just great. And I'm here to say that in 1983, I went to a convention in Anaheim, California. I was 28 years old at the time. Met Daryl and Rob, who said, you want to sell our cylinders on the East Coast? And I said, well, you know, I'll take a shot at it. So they said, we'll give you a load of tanks and we'll see what you can do. And we'll come by in like 60 or 90 days. And if you haven't sold anything, we'll just take them back and we'll just go on to several ways. If you sold them, pay for us and, you know, pay for it and we'll continue from there. So obviously those tanks sold and we went on to a 38-year history with the Manchester organization and much success. And I owe a lot of our success to that day when Daryl and Rob said, hey, we'll give you some tanks, see what you can do. So it was the start of our business, and I really appreciate the friendship over the years and, you know, family organization, and everyone at Tarrenton wishes them a most happy 75 years and good health in the future.
Thank you. Tom, would you stand up there, Tom? All right. Now we're going to have a little review of Manchester through the years, the early history of Manchester Tank, and Rob's going to do the honors there. Have at it, Rob.
I'm going to cover I'm going to cover the first 25 years, which weren't terribly exciting. Darrell gets the exciting next 25 years. Then Nancy's going to talk about from that day until current. At any rate, early history, some of it I've already mentioned. Of course, we're going to cover from these years. And it was a year, several years of pretty tough times. So started out at Manchester Welding, as I already talked about, on Manchester Boulevard. This is my dad's business card. And these are the first 9 employees. Aren't they a good-looking bunch of guys?
I tell you.
They were
Real winners.
damn good welders, I will say that. And one of those guys, with his arms crossed in the middle, taught me how to weld. And I guarantee you, there isn't anybody in this room that can weld as good as Virgil Austin.
Amen.
And this is our, as Darrell mentioned earlier, our single product, 47-pound, not DOT, by the way, ASME API, heavy-duty tank. And you might ask why. And because in those years, the only tanks heads we could get were thicker than heck, probably 3/16 or better. And they welded the first ones by hand. I can remember seeing them do that. This is a dual assembly because after we lost that one big account, we started in the RV business, my dad did. So this goes back into 1947. I mentioned earlier that we had a little problem with our tenant, or our landlord, but my dad signed this check. The rent was really expensive, $75. Molly took over when our father passed away, and we moved to Linwood in that year, as I mentioned earlier. We had several groundbreakings, several expansions to that neighborhood, and we have a picture coming up to show you. But it started out with one building, about 3,300 square feet, and ended up with probably 70, 80,000 square feet. This is the plant in maybe the early 70s, Darrell. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, I took that with a helicopter.
Yeah.
But that was not when.
He wasn't flying it.
It wasn't all, I wasn't flying, no. Still can't fly that helicopter. But we added some more building after that.
So the office building was built in 3 expansions, but it's the actual building on the left, as you see it, went all the way to the back street. And a 2-truck loading dock in the front. So we started building ASME tanks as we know them today, tractor tanks before diesel hit the market, truck and auto tanks. You won't guess where that picture was taken.
Guess not.
You guarantee you won't guess whose car this is. It's my car, 1941 Chevy, converted to propane in 1952. The good-looking one there was me, by the way.
That's his opinion.
In 1955, our mother started the Stockbones Retirement Plan, and our first $1 million year in 1960, so we had a party.
Hey!
And later, there's the pictures over here our daughter Rhonda put on there, and you'll see that picture. I know everybody in there. And then we sent Darrell, we excommunicated Darrell and his young family and sent him down to Georgia in 1966, right?
66, yeah.
66, starting with, 10, 15 employees. And the big move at that time, believe it or not, was General Telephone in Tampa, Florida, through our distributor, Irving Krutzinger, had a big contract with General Telephone, and we couldn't get tanks built fast enough in California and ship them all the way to Florida. So Irving Krutzinger wanted Darrell and I to go in with him and build a tank or plant in Florida. We talked about it at length, and believe it or not, Darrell and I agreed again we would do our own thing in Lithonia, Georgia.
As a suburb of Atlanta.
15 miles east of downtown. Later, Darrell and I met Al Costanzo of Western Tank and Steel, who was a pretty fierce competitor of Manchester, but he was bigger in the air receiver market, and he had a lot of the OEM tractor business. This is the plant in Lubbock, Texas.
Later on, not in the beginning.
Yes, later on, after several expansions. And they built a very slight percentage of air receivers like Ingersoll Rand, et cetera, Quincy and those guys.
And that, the locations took about, maybe 18 months, 20 months. I would drive down the road and the phone would, no, if we didn't have to get a payphone, call Texas, deal was off. Next phone call, deal was on, off, on, off, on. So we go down to sign the papers, and Al Costanza finally realized what he did, because he had delegated the whole thing to his CPA, and said no. So we started the whole thing over again. The next time only took 2 days. And we finally had to give in. He wanted it to be on the wall of Texas, so we gave in. But it became a good partnership. He was very difficult, interesting guy to work with, and difficult sometimes.
Yeah, amen. He walked out of the last negotiating 3 times and came back all 3 times. At the Red Raider Inn, we could look at the stadium in Lubbock, Texas. Gregg Manufacturing was a small RV manufacturer in the West Coast, and we bought them. They did sales about $1 million, and actually had about, Mr. Thompson's here in the room, about half of Fleetwood business in the West Coast, and we had the other half. So we manufactured product at Gregg Manufacturing as under the Gregg label, and nobody knew it for several years.
But they came to us and he said, we're going to sell the place. That was their name. It wasn't a shop or a plant, the place.
Joke. We have a picture of one of the tanks built. They did everything you could do wrong times 2, but they made a lot of money.
It wasn't much of a plant.
In fact, our daughter Roberta found this was it eBay or something the other day, and I hand welded with pipe instead of a roll shell. I mean, it's 1946-ish. 47. So at the end of the first 25 years, we think we're around $12 million of sales. We did in the later years, I don't know, in the 70s or so, we got involved in agricultural flaming, and that was a big deal for us. We actually had a patent on the power jet burner, which I think is still being made today, Nancy, I hope. This is one of the early picnics at 25th anniversary year. There's a brochure over on the table over here that shows that. That's I think those guys were Daryl, Rob, John Snap, and Molly, but I'm not sure. They looked pretty young to me.
Pretty young guy.
I think I'd vote for that.
This next part's Daryl. I'll do it.
So we spent the next 25 years, growing the company in various ways. And the first major jump off was purchasing a company in Elkhart called Dot Cylinders. And it was owned by 4 guys who had left another cylinder manufacturer. And truthfully, they did everything they could wrong. And Tom was there a lot, and we had a lot of interesting times trying to turn that thing around. You might remember one time we went down to the Matterhorn restaurant, and we all walked out on the ice and managed to all fall down at the same time. Of course, we were a bit, sober, but who cares? But we went on to build that to a big facility. I guess nowadays it's being transferred to Kentucky, but it was a great plant for many years. Built a lot of product. And then we decided to get international during the years of the boom of propane for motor fuel, and went to Canada and built this plant in southern Ontario. Very successful for many, many years. And of course that market changed, the plant's no longer there, but it was a great venture for many, many years. And then we went to Hannibal, Missouri. Whoopee! And the story behind that, we had pretty well mothballed the plant in Georgia. We needed a facility to manufacture some of this product. And we were going to go to Quincy, Illinois. And they were not being very cooperative. And someone said, let's go to Hannibal. They were down there, they were eager. And they were. And they gave us some land and some long-term financing and some tax abatements. How about that, huh? And we began that with, we took this young guy named Glenn Rule, took him over to Hannibal, and they said, here it is. And we had about 25 employees, and ended up how many? 200? Anyhow, so that was a major.
We ended up with 500.
Yeah.
500. Whew.
And then we built a plant in Virginia to build the 420 or 200-pound cylinders. And I designed that plant on the back of an envelope in an airplane. And the majority of it didn't work. And it was very successful, and that now being built in Quincy, Illinois, but it's a great plant. And then we really got kind of stupid for a while.
No, crazy, Daryl.
And I'll take credit for that. And through the association, I met the guy who owned Buckeye Boiler. And
RVI.
they were a big
BBMA.
air manufacturer. Very broken. But we managed to buy it for almost nothing, but it was still a bad deal. And but we managed to. They're only in Dayton about 3 years. The union didn't like us. We didn't like them, and so we left.
Yeah, Daryl sent me up there to close the plant. Thank you very much, Daryl.
Yeah, so, but it was a good venture. We got a lot of good business out of it, and a lot of jump equipment, and so it worked out pretty well. And then we had the challenge of going to Crossville, Tennessee. Where's that at? Oh yeah, up the road here a little bit. And I won't go into the whole story because we haven't got all evening, but it was owned by the former owner, widow of General Processing, which was Phillips Industries. And then they came back into General Processing. And the deal fell apart several times, typical. And Mrs. Weibel was a little bit interesting to work with. I'm being very, very polite. And so we managed to get that thing done finally. And of course, today it's a great plant. So it put us in the gas grill cylinder business. And that's the end of my history.
All right.
Well, yeah, we got, two more, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sure how this whole happened. We had a call from a bank in Australia and said, we got this company down there that's struggling pretty hard, and we need a new owner. And so I flew down to Australia and hopped around in a little airplane and met this group, and they didn't have a clue what was going on. They had an office in a big city, in a big tower, and the plant was 100 miles away, and they had it was overstaffed and everything else in the world, but it was still an opportunity. And we bought it for almost nothing. Clean house, and it's still there. Great venture. And their specialty was in the galvanized cylinders, which we never did here.
OPD.
And then we got the OPD story. And how many? Do we have 3 or 4 hours?
Hey.
We started this overfill protection device, or the stop fill, or some way not to get a cylinder too full of gas in the 70s. And we made several attempts to make things that didn't work. Some kind of worked. We formed a corporation called AutoStop, which I still have on my Blazer out there. They still work, but they're not very, they weren't very cost effective. And we fooled around, and we finally, though, in the early 80s, got the fire codes for both the fire code and the RV codes changed to mandate a OPD in tanks for motorhomes and trucks. But guess what? It took us 18 more years to get it into a 20-pound cylinder. But we did that in, I think, 1998. But in 1990, I went to Luxembourg, saw my friend that owned Rotorex, and said, can you make this valve smaller, go down this little hole? He said, I don't know. But guess what? In a few days, they made a prototype. And that's the history of the OPD as it is today. And it took us, a long time to get an engineer. Robert's, he's a politician, and I'm not. And he got all the codes changed with Billy Prim here in the room. And today it's standard. And I think today that, roughly speaking, worldwide, there's some like 75 million of these things in operation. And guess what? Not one single life been lost in the last 10 years. Not one single lawsuit. And I heard that from the attorney from Manchester in this room a month ago. It came to the wedding from Mark Miller's daughter. So, it's. And we got this picture here. This is the twinsies. This is the Reichenauer twins. It's the same body, different head.
So the question is, which one's real?
Yeah, that's right. We know that story. You can
Well,
guess.
I'll tell you, Daryl was on the front page of some magazine. I was ticked off, so I had a good friend of mine here in the room take Daryl's head off and put my head on. And so I called Daryl and sent him a picture, right? You know, the new fancy stuff with an iPhone. He said, "What do you think of that?" He said, "That's not funny." And I said, "Daryl, I think it's really funny." Next.
Okay, let's go on. What are we doing here?
Well, I guess the first order of business would be to congratulate the Reef Schneider family and on 75 years. You know, that's actually a fairly significant accomplishment for any company. And it's just been quite a run for them. They built a wonderful company based on sound business principles and you know, delivering for their customers and so forth. And I don't think you could find anybody who wouldn't say it's just a great family company, all the employees there. And I know for sure that Molly would be so proud of the company. And it's too bad she's not here to see it. It really is. She'd be so proud of them. My relationship probably started, I'd say around 45 years ago. I was a purchasing manager in one of Fleetwood Enterprises factories. And that's when I first came in contact with the LP gas business and buying the products from Manchester Tank. And, you know, at that time, in that position, you would just have mostly contact with the local sales representatives and so forth. But over the years, things changed, and I had different jobs, and finally had more access to Rob and Daryl. And we just developed a very strong relationship. You know, they were always very service oriented, very aggressive at building business. In fact, one time, I think I even asked Daryl and Rob, you know, why do you guys work so hard? I can't believe it. The company was already very, very successful. I was kind of thinking, you know, when is it going to be time to sit back and relax? And they basically said, well, you know, you just can't stand still. You're either growing or shrinking, and shrinking's not good. So we think we better go the other direction. So that was actually something I never forgot. I think it might have been the first time anybody ever told me that particular saying about a company. So I always admired the aggressiveness that they exercised building the business. It was pretty amazing. Their innovation too was really good. They developed products for their industry and for their company that helped them grow, and actually helped the industry too. And they had great relationships with everybody in the industry. I attended a couple of industry events with them, kind of unrelated to the RV industry, but directly related to LP gas, and everybody just seemed to have a great time and had great relationships. And that was impressive. Anyway, it's just been a wonderful run. It's been a great relationship. And we're really looking forward to attending the party down in Franklin. So congratulations to the Manchester team and all the past and present people and the family that worked there. It was a very cohesive group, and they deserve a lot of congratulations.
Manchester, 75 years. That's a great history. I'm Billy Prim, and I'm glad to be a part of 30 plus years of that history. I started Blue Rhino in the early 90s. And at that time, no one was doing what we call cylinder exchange. I can remember the first time that I came out to talk to Rob and Daryl about the idea of creating this company called Blue Rhino. And they looked at me like I was crazy. They said, "You're going to call it what?" And I said, "It's a Blue Rhino." I said, "It's a rhino with the blue flame and propane coming out. And guys, we're going to sell more cylinders than anybody in the world." And they looked at me and they said, "Well, let me hear your plan." So So I had this big presentation that I had put together telling them how we were going to sign up all these Lowe's and Home Depots and Walmarts all over the country to start selling propane in their stores. And they looked at me with some intrigue, but a lot of doubt. And they said, and my last slide was talking about what kind of volumes we were doing, but also I had this little caveat. I needed a line of credit to get started. The mood sort of changed in the room saying, oh yeah, you're going to do this, but you need a line of credit. So to make a long story short, I did talk them into giving me a line of credit, and it became one of the best investments they ever made. Together, we created a whole new industry and probably tripled the number of cylinders that are in use today, which became a good thing for both of us. Daryl, Rob, and all the Manchester team, congratulations, and glad to be a small part of this history of a great company.
That's okay, I can say it up here and.
I can't fight.
Can't fight it, yes. Okay, so back to Grandma. So anyway, I just wanted to do a little bit of history because I think it's interesting, and I think that people find it interesting that Grandma and my grandfather Ed they didn't know each other, their families didn't know each other, but they were also all from Grimm, Russia. So we're Germans from Russia, full-blooded German, but they lived in Russia, so she was born in Russia. Somehow, we don't know, somehow they got from Grimm, Russia to Liverpool to get on the ship and come to America. And then they ended up in Windsor, Colorado. And so we have found some old photos of the family. Grandma was the oldest, and she, the oldest of 8, yes. And so we found some fun old pictures here. And a wonderful portrait, as a photographer, I can appreciate this, a wonderful portrait of Ed and Molly for their wedding. And this is very interesting. I'm going to have my dad take over some of this, but just to say that I did not realize until doing this program that they lived in such a small area. So, Dad, you can start talking about
This is
Kellam.
mentioned earlier, Kellam, Colorado. And it's a gas station, convenience store, home, and a blacksmith shop, kind of all in one. And the town is huge, 25 people.
Yeah, all service. But I just can't believe that they lived in such a small room behind the store there. And your dad's car?
I presume it's my dad's car, yes. We don't know what year, but he was a handsome dude. This is his letterhead for his blacksmith shop. And as I mentioned earlier, most blacksmiths are very creative. Farmers come in and ask for something special, and that's how he got into the innovative part of his life. Actually, there's another slide coming up. He designed and built the forerunner of a farmhand, if those of you that know what farm equipment is all about. It's a piece of equipment that go in and either haul the manure out of the cattle pens or the hay. Go ahead to the next one.
Well, I just want to point out that it does say the famous Reef Schneider Weeder Blacksmithing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he called himself
I like
famous.
that he called himself the famous Reef Schneider. I don't know.
Go ahead. So this again is his shop. And that truck that was in front there is actually a truck that's designed for hauling beets to the mill. And the interesting thing is the sides come down and the beets fall into the sugar factory. And this I showed before is the patent itself when he was 25 years old of a beet knife. And this, of course, is in front of the gas station. That little guy is me and Daryl and Elaine, with our mother. That convenience store, by the way, was probably maybe 3 feet by 20. The forerunner of what you now call 7-Eleven or one of those kind of things. I wish we had those gas pumps, but I don't know where they're at. This is one of the only picture we could find of my mother manning the store, so to speak. Why did everybody wear hats then in those days? I have no idea, but. Okay. This is the huge trailer that I mentioned before that my dad lived in before we came to Las Vegas, Nevada. And I don't know how we did it, but 5 of us lived in a 16-foot travel trailer. Move. And this is the one Daryl mentioned that we graduated up to a 24-footer. And we moved to California in that one about a year and a half later, none too soon to satisfy us. Daryl's got a bandaged foot there. I think he got in a fight.
I love this photo because look at him saluting. I believe they're saying good riddance to Las Vegas.
Absolutely. That's a good comeback, Roberta.
And going to sunny Southern California with the beaches. Boy,
Compton,
can't beat
California,
that.
and lived in another trailer park. So we didn't have, Daryl and Eileen did not have indoor plumbing until we got to Linwood, and that was a few years later. This is my dad's business card, of course. And this is one of the few pictures taken at Manchester Boulevard with my father on the left and I don't know who on the right. Again, that's the same dual assembly in the RV business. The interesting thing about the RV business, I forget which name it was, Daryl might help me, but one of the pallbearers at our dad's funeral was from, help me Daryl, I can't remember, one of the major, I think it was Modernistic. And that's the check for the rent. This is another, I think this picture was taken actually in the Linwood plant in the early years, maybe 5 or 6, 10 employees. Again, John Snap is the one on the right, I believe. And this is the same picture we showed before. What I would say about my dad is he was very creative about how to make money, and somehow he put food on the table. Mm-hmm. One of the few pictures in front of the Manchester Boulevard, and we showed that one before. This is the groundbreaking for the very first office that we built in Linwood, and I would guess it's in the early 50s. And by the way, that guy next to my mother is her brother, Ben Bruner, who worked for us for 16 years and then went into business at a little company called Bruner Engineering, which is now part of the family. It's a long story. So he went from my boss to a competitor. How's that? And this is one of the early picnics in Linwood Park. Our mother believed strongly in employee parties, Christmas parties, picnics at every plant, and Glenn could attest to that. That is my aunt in front of, I think, a bigger weird tank. As I said before, the big thing is we build tanks out of almost anything we get heads for. That's why that one weird, I bet we didn't sell more than a dozen of them. That camp stove, by the way, is an invention my dad had. It's way ahead of its time. And there's actually a 2.5-gallon tank behind that. So it's probably the forerunner of a propane camp stove.
Coleman stove.
It's a forerunner before Coleman, absolutely, way before. Obviously, he passed away in 1947. This is an early picture in Linwood when things were mostly outside. That is Chuck Bennett, who is Susie Rule's father, who worked for us.
Hey, Chuck.
Big in the burner business there. He's trying to show how to demonstrate how to burn weeds. Yet another groundbreaking. We had several. This is all of us in the family, plus John Snap and my mother's assistant, Mr. Polson. I think that was when the first major office expansion. This is another company picking in 1954. Several family members were very young at the time. This is probably in the early 50s or late 40s. I could tell by the collar, the guard. And this is interesting because this is my mother's high school graduation that she took GED class. I think she graduated from high school through GED at the same time Elaine graduated from junior college. I think that's right. This is an interesting, I think Daryl did this slideshow. Daryl, do you remember this? Anyway, I think it starts in the first from about 19 something to the 50s, and I think the sales at the end were about $336,000. I can't read it from here. You can. Surrounding the boss. Same John, Daryl, myself, and Mr. Polson. This is part of the Daryl sales team. Al Rue in the lower left, Chuck Bennett up there, Daryl in the middle, our uncle who was on the left side of Daryl, and probably the early 70s, I would guess. This is an interesting story. I was in JC's and Governor Ronald Reagan spoke to us, and that's a big picture of my mother and Governor Reagan and myself. We used to store our tanks on a 4x6 pallet, 24 cylinders to a pallet. We had a huge earthquake one year, and I think Daryl and I rushed to the plant, and not one cylinder fell off the rack. I have no idea how that happened. You can tell by the haircut. This is the future superintendent of Manchester. His name's Eric Riefschneider. I think he made it to sweeping the floors and doing some other things at Gregg Manufacturing. Probably 4 years old. But he's reading the plans, as you can see, for a plant expansion. Eric, did we approve the plans? I guess. I don't know. Thank you. Thank you. This is 3 past presidents of the Western Liquid Gas Association, myself, Lou Dowdy, and I can't remember the other guy's name. In the jitney there is owned by the Rule family. This is one of the early gauge cylinders we made because everybody wanted to know how much propane was in the tank, but nobody wanted to pay for it. So it wasn't a huge success, but we did sell a fair amount of gauge cylinders, 20-pound gauge cylinders, and 30s and 40s. Daryl was the paint guru in our group. We had oven baked, and we had electrostatic spray before anybody ever heard of it. I can't remember when. This was baked on enamel, and we actually had a salt spray chamber later in Brentwood, so we could do 200-year, right, Tom, exaggerated salt spray to compare ourselves to Brand W. I wonder who that is. And these are some very handsome guys. That's the executive committee at one time. Daryl, Al Costanzo, myself, and John Snap. One of many sales and management meetings in Palm Desert. In fact, I think that's when we first got the Lubbock guys. So there's another slide, the first time they came. Manchester got involved in the off-road racing as a promotion back in the Baja 100, Baja 1000, and we actually had Parnelli Jones ride in that Bronco with a propane tank fueled by petroleum gas. So those were the fun days. Those striped jackets with the white sleeves came out of that era. Another picture, this is an interesting part, it ties into Manchester. Chuck Bennett and myself co-chaired a clean air caravan to Sacramento. We had 4 different caravans with propane-powered vehicles ending up at the state capitol. And the guy on the governor's left was president of the association. I was the chairman. And the ultimate deal here was we got a 5-year exemption for propane as an auto gas on the state fuel tax. And we were on television, radio, the whole works. And the governor didn't even know he was going to be in that deal until 3 minutes before he got there, because I happened to be a close friend of his press secretary. Long story. This is in the flaming business days when we had agricultural flaming. This was an alfalfa flaming. And this is Big M, the Manchester Long Haul Trucking. I don't remember what year, Daryl, but we had 2 plants in those days, maybe 3. We went from Linwood to Lithonia, Georgia. And the funny story about this deal was that our truck driver decided to have a little private enterprise. So Daryl wanted some Coors beer for a petroleum manager in Lithonia. So he took it to the extreme and started putting pallets full of Coors beer. And he got busted. I don't know what happened to him. We called it Big M. This is the picture of the 25th anniversary picnic.
I wanted to do a little plug here for how wonderful it was to grow up with the annual Manchester picnics. How many of us remember shucking corn? How many ears did we shuck? As many ears as we peeled shrimp and popped champagne. But many fond memories with us kids. And it really was a great turnout because we played wonderful fun games, egg toss, balloon toss, lots of bingo, lots of prizes.
And that's the whole family there, I think.
That's all of us. That's all of us younger cousins. The younger set of cousins.
Yeah.
Rules and Reef Schneiders, and there's Grandma again. I love this just to show her out in the plant and one of the heaters there.
This is what I was. Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, just that Dad when he was president for WLGA. And I think that pretty much everybody in this room can also claim the stake in trying to find Manchester propane tanks wherever they go. This is my sister Rhonda, and we would be out camping in the RV park, and we go around and try to find our tanks. Of course, most of them were, but it was fun to go and look for them. We still do that. I do too. We do too. The good old Linwood Press for announcing presidents and.
I don't remember being that young and good. This was, that's Rayford Johnson in the middle. We had a Manchester 5K team. I did not run, I want you to know. And Rayford Johnson, and I don't know, I think we came in second.
Randy Wall.
And that's Jerry Seckinger, Jack Davidson on the left, Randy Wall. I don't remember everybody else.
Ted Kozlowski.
Yeah, that's Jill's. Ted Kozlowski. Yep. We got whipped by a professional team. Next. Next. Next.
They're talking.
Go ahead. One of many product pictures in use. That's an El Camino tank. When we first built the engineering building in Linwood, we had a distributor meeting, and Darrell wanted all these tanks labeled, et cetera, laid out on the floor. It didn't look like that very long, but this is where we did the R&D center, built a lot of equipment for all the plants in this facility. And you won't believe what's on in that building today. They are growing marijuana. True. We sold it without them telling us the truth. I would never have done that. I don't feel strongly, but you know, those that know me know me. This is the only domestic tank we built in the old days at Lubbock, a vertical dispenser, and quite an engineering feat. This tank, this system could withstand, help me, Darrell, 100-mile-an-hour wind or something. Yeah, it was a Jerry Steckinger project. I don't know if Tom was involved in it, but we sold a bunch of these all over the country. You'll still find a few of them in different stations throughout the country. Really? True Value Hardware. Yeah.
True Value Hardware, Franklin, Tennessee.
Right around the corner. During the Iranian oil crisis, we couldn't build enough autogas tanks. Of course, the RV market and Mr. Thompson sitting back there, we're right in the toilet, so to speak. But motor fuel went straight north. We ended up with two manufacturers in the U.S., Bruder and Manchester, with us being the big gorilla. And in overnight, we had 16 competitors. We couldn't build enough tanks quick enough. This is our 35th anniversary picture of, it was on the invitation that you guys got to get here. Go ahead.
And what year?
I don't know what year this was, but
it was a big deal to get the Good Scout Award with Boy Scouts.
And Pat Boone was the keynote speaker at that evening. This is a typical dual assembly, more and more recent years for the RV business. By the way, go back, that picture, we innovated another thing that most people don't know about. In the old days, all connections when propane were copper tubing. So we came up with a UL-approved hose assembly, and we made them by the millions. And the hose assemblies were a big part of our business, and Marshall Gas and Brass was our partners in that stuff. Three of us in Brentwood, Tennessee, some year, I don't know. This is a Linwood picture back in when Dale, I think, was the manager. I'm not sure. In front of the office.
Audrey Myers.
He's back in the back with the tie on.
There's Audrey.
Larry Korn's in there. Okay. Now, let me read this to you, because I know you can't read this. This is the quote from my mother that we put on a plaque when we dedicated the main office building in Elkhart. And here it is. Employees are people, our most important asset. Treat them fairly and honestly as if they were your own family.
Hey.
This is the monument when we sold to McWayne in, no, AEA, I think. I'm not sure.
AEA.
AEA in 1996. I don't know who that is. He claimed to be our pilot. One day I locked the door before he got in, and he says, "You might need me." I said that before. This is one of my favorite pictures, taken at the last supplier conference that I attended with Jill Drager, who's still at Manchester. Vicki, right here, raise your hand, Vicki.
Hey.
And Hannibal and Lubbock. Darrell and I had the pleasure of meeting Major General Colin Powell, and we flew into Washington, D.C., picked him up, spent 3 hours right next to him, talking about everything from leadership to politics, etc. A true gentleman and a real loss to our country. This is an important slide for us because in 1996, we sold 70% of the stock to AEA Private Equity and reformed the board of directors. The chairman at Manchester at that time was just a kind of a Johnny come lady kind of a guy, the former president of Exxon. His name was Cliff Garvin. Tom Solis, you're going to hear a little bit on later. Bob Williams from Williams Energy. Some really heavy hitters. I don't know who Blind Ryan was. Billy Prim, I think, had to leave, but this is in our parking lot across the street from the main office.
So I have a fun story with this. When I was doing missions work at Christ Community Church here in Franklin, I took a team to Haiti, and we are in the middle of the country. We drove as far as we could go, then we walked about another mile, and we got to a village, and lo and behold, there was a 100-gallon tank. Now, this is not the actual photo. This is one like it. I took a picture of myself, and it was a Manchester tank. So that was pretty neat. I did not expect that. And I don't know if some of you know that we have made the big time. We have major product placement in the commercial for Tractor Supply. It is a wonderful commercial. If you haven't seen it, go on to their website, look it up. It's called Ready for Fall out there, and it is, this is a still from the commercial. Not only are they great commercials anyway, but it is fantastic to see Manchester tanks very prominent.
I have this sold in my backyard because a lot of people who come to various functions don't know what my business was. So if you read that carefully, it says, if you bought one of these, you help pay for this house.
And my sister had this on her car, but in closing, I want to say that we kind of use that word tanks and tanks to you, but In all seriousness, a lot of people in this room, most people in this room have a lot to be thankful for with Manchester Tank. Not the least the grandchildren and so on from Molly. And I know Kurt and Eric and my sister and I, we started out in the trenches, literally cleaning toilets and sweeping floors and hauling tank heads in the heat of the summer and hot and sweat, long grueling hours, and wonderful experience to do all that work. Well put, huh?
Yeah, wonderful.
Good grit, Kurt. But, you know, and our parents, Auntie Elaine and Uncle Al, Uncle Daryl, and my dad worked long hours, and we didn't see them a lot, and we had a childhood, you know, that didn't have them around that much, but we are reaping the benefits now. And I live the lifestyle that I live because of Manchester. And tribute to them.
Thank you.
Okay.
As we do in manufacturing. I guess first let me say I'm a bit intimidated standing up here with Manchester Tank royalty. I feel like in my mere 7 years experience with the company, I've been a team member for about 7.5 years now. And can I just say, I am so honored to be in this room. This is probably one of the highlights of my professional career. To be in the celebrating an amazing company, 75 years, celebrating it in the room of the folks who really built it, in the home of the founding family, is just remarkable. And I just hope my team, my current team, who I know there are many of you here today, just recognize the significance of this moment. And I think when I joined Manchester Tank, I joined for the first time a business, a family, an industry, all at the same time. And that is truly something special. And so I appreciate you guys just bringing that alive for us today, because it's really a special thing. So thank you.